If there was a new vendor, how would you recommend they kind of set up and plan and put into place their channel?
The more I moved up the management chain, the less time I spent customer and partner facing. And I've got to be honest, I think my strength was always customer facing, partner facing, building those relationships.
It was a bit rock and roll back in the day, was it?
Hopefully we'll leverage some money out of that.
Welcome to the Channel Zone. My name's Mark Edwards, and I am joined here today by another Mark, a legendary Mark. This is Mark Devonshire. Mark is the Alliances Manager at Crowdstrike, but has I'd say a vast history, Mark. Kind of looking online, it's kind of 25 years of channel and partner management, Veritas, Symantec, Quest, and now Crowdstrike. A teeny weeny bit of direct sales in the past, I think, with AST. Was I reading correctly there?
Well, sort of. It was actually at Seagate as opposed to AST. So you've been very kind by saying it's just 25 years in the channel. It's probably nearer 35 now, in fairness. But my whole career has been in the channel. I did have a little dabble in end user sales, but I miss the channel and the community of the channel. It's where my strength is. I've been a bit of a channel ninja over the years. And a huge believer in the value that a really well-run, powerful channel can offer to organisations or vendors specifically around driving their growth strategy.
Yeah, fantastic. Now you're new to Crowdstrike, I think. Is it relatively new?
6 months in. It's been a lot of fun so far. Really interesting, very different to where I've worked before. On a positive perspective, the average age is a lot younger than I'm used to in terms of some of the other vendors I've worked for. But that's giving you a lot more energy. And, these youngsters are very, very good at what they do. So I find myself at the tail end of my career learning from the youngsters and hopefully giving something to them back as well, based on the experience I've got. But the energy they've got, the way they do things differently, it's really powerful. It's really interesting to see.
And the youngsters that you're talking about, are they at Crowdstrike, or are they within the kind of channel community? Are they out there with your partners?
Absolutely both. And that's not to say that the older generation myself have gone. They're still there, right? But certainly in terms of Crowdstrike, I'm probably the oldest one there by an absolute country mile. But certainly within the partners as well, you're seeing a lot more youngsters coming through. Degree level educated, very smart at what they do. And probably if I go back to my days when I was their age working in the channel, it was more fly-by-night type stuff we used to do. We never had a really clear strategy. It would just get out there, meet them, and hope, I think, is probably more the strategy we used to have way back in the day. Clearly, there was some planning that went on. But nowadays, they're very much more structured in their approach, articulate themselves very well. And it's great to see, really great to see.
Well, I think it's fair to say the IT ecosystem in that 25, 30 years, it has really kind of optimized the system, bit by bit by bit. We had Glenn Graham on here, I know from a few years back. But I mean, Glenn was even there back in the day when I think he was working for a tech vendor. I can't remember what the technology was, but it was the idea of actually operating through a channel was a kind of light bulb moment for them. And Glenn and his colleagues were literally trying to lay down the foundations for that network. So here you are, as I said, 30 years later, let's say, and I think those paths are well and truly understood and effectively optimized. So maybe the new generation or the next generation are just kind of picking up on that. They've got a clear road ahead of them and a roadmap to follow. Whereas in the past, as you said, you were kind of making it up as you go along.
I don't think you're making it up as you go along, but I think the partners and distributors have matured as well. So back in the day, it was very much, wait for the end of the quarter, try and do deals at the end of the quarter, offering deep discounts, then stick them in a warehouse. Those days have long gone now, right? So you've got a little more structure in the approach. But I think as you've seen it, I think more and more people, there was a time when channel went in and out of fashion to a certain extent. Vendors would either go directly, then they would go, we're going through the channel to drive growth. And then 2 years later, they go, nope, we're going back down to a channel model, because what the channel allows you to do is drive scale. Right. And, I've only ever seen one organisation really scale their business without the effective use of the channel. And they actually are now fully channel orientated. That was probably Dell back in the day.
I was going to say Dell, or maybe IBM perhaps, or but it was a direct
IBM
sales
was a little
force.
bit before my time, Mark. I'm not quite as old as you, but they were Yeah, just after my time to a certain extent in terms of their whole channel strategy. But yeah, Dell had the structure, but if you ever went into Dell, either in Cherrywood or in Bracknell, I mean, it was thousands and thousands of people just on the sales side.
Was
When you
it?
think of all the back end infrastructure, just to collect the debts and everything else, it's you can see why they moved away from the direct model into a channel model because it just offers so many economies of scale.
Yes.
And you are increasing if you can get the motivation right at the channel and educate them properly. When I talk about educating them properly, I'm not talking about you going in and enabling them to deliver your portfolio or pitch your portfolio to customers. That's not how they operate. I think if you can educate them to solve business issues and business challenges customers have got and educate them around that messaging, it's still very much a joint motion in terms of getting the deal closed with customers, but they will find the opportunities for you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, they like it if you can bring opportunities to them as well. And my
It's a
guess
two-way
is,
street, you're right.
yeah, that's right. And my guess is your kind of online marketing is very much about generating, potential buyers for your products, your services, and then perhaps feeding that into the channel as well. So, as you said, it is a two-way street.
It's a two-way street, but I think one of the areas that the channel's really matured over the years was going back to the early days. They didn't differentiate the type of channel deals that were in the market. So
Yeah.
a deal was a deal. It was whatever came through. It was whatever the partner could make on it margin wise. I think what we've seen over the last probably 8 to 10 years, maybe a little bit longer, is we've seen deal registrations come in where partners and distis get rewarded a lot more for bringing those incremental opportunities into play. Get deal reg. It could be the difference. There's a significant difference now in terms of, for a standard deal that we just classify as fulfilled, it can be anything from sort of 3 to 5%, somewhere in that sort of region. It's transactional. There is value in that from a vendor perspective, but it's where they go out and they identify opportunity, they bring it to us, they get it deal raised, it's net new opportunity. They can make 35, 40% on those deals, right? And that's what you want. You want the channel to become, a well-run channel should become an extension of your sales and marketing team to a certain extent, bringing you new incremental opportunities, being driven by or created by the MDF side of things that I know you want to allude to at some stage. And I think it's the organisations that leverage the channel properly and really pull that growth lever and work with the channel collaboratively that see the benefits of it.
So how to optimize that relationship then? So you say that there are some vendors that do better than others out of kind of maximizing and optimizing the relationship?
Yeah, I think so. I think it depends, Mark, in terms of the sectors the vendor's operating in. So typically, in my experience, you'll see a rep at a vendor will be constantly moaning that there's no value from the channel. They tend to be and not exclusively, I'm not pigeonholing anyone here, but they tend to be the enterprise reps that have a few number of accounts and know those accounts well, and they tend to judge the value of the channel on a deal by deal basis. Actually, that's not how you should value the channel. If you look at if you go down from that enterprise space into say the mid market or even the SMB space where there are tens of thousands of customers, a well managed leveraged channel can bring you hundreds and hundreds of opportunities and deals at that end of the market, which is a vendor you wouldn't even get close to because of the structure you've got.
Do CrowdStrike operate in that arena? Is SMB a marketplace for you?
Moving into it. Yeah, we're just moving into it. So it's a big growth area for us. Cyber is, there's a lot of organisations on the cyber bandwagon now. I think if you go on LinkedIn, you have a look around, everyone's talking cyber. And actually, when you look at some of it, you think you're not a cyber organisation, you're just leveraging it. The beauty of CrowdStrike is that we stop breaches, right? That's what we do. That's where we came from. And that's the game changer. So I think we're one of the companies that have actually earned the right to use cyber and position ourselves as the market leader in that cyber space.
I would have thought you're probably one of the most well-known as well, I would have thought, aren't you? I mean, you've got a kind of global reputation and you've been in this space for a number of years. I think I would probably have first, maybe 5 years ago, CrowdStrike came to my attention. So, as you said, there are, about the numbers. I think I did some work a few years ago for Microsoft. At the time, they were saying there were 1,600 vendors in the security space. It's now over 2,000. And my guess is every month or every quarter, there's another half a dozen of them being spun out of universities or being, kind of let go from other organizations. So it's growing all of the time. But
Yeah,
the sector
and
is
there,
that's the issue, though. The sector's growing, isn't it? The spend in the area from customers is on the
yeah, I
up.
mean it's vital. I mean you just have to open the press every day and you see what happens with the cyber attacks that's going on. But what cyber is very complex. You know, there are thousands of products out there now, and you look at the average organisation, they've got 50, 60 different point products, driving
Yes.
massive amounts of complexity. And I think where we go from a market perspective, we're going to see a lot more consolidation coming up. Yeah, because that complexity drives issues around responding to breaches, being ahead of the game. When you look at these adversaries, and you go back probably just 2 years, it was take you can measure how long it would take an adversary to get into your organisation in days and almost weeks to a certain
Right.
extent. You look at it now, it's hours and minutes. And the more complex your environment, the harder it is to go out and establish it. So there's a big play going on at the moment around being aligning to one vendor with a platform where possible to speed up that response time. As the adversary started to leverage AI and things like that, you've got to be smart. You've got to be ahead of the game. Otherwise, you're just going to get breached. And the cost of a breach, average cost of a breach now for a big organisation, somewhere in the region of about $5 million.
I remember that. I think that was one of the stats that first kind of jumped out at me. The other one is, wasn't it the length of time it typically takes for an organisation to identify that they have been breached?
Yeah. You regularly read. I can't remember who it was. I was reading something the other day, and there'd been an adversary in an organisation environment for weeks. Yeah, without them
Yes.
even knowing. And I can't
Yeah.
remember how they established it, but that sort of stuff is you've got to be ahead of the game on that. 'Cause the fines as well. It's not just the breaches that are causing issues in terms of the cost of downtime. It's the fines you now get as well because you
Yeah,
have to report
yeah.
it with a certain number of hours, etc., etc.
Yeah. So, on the alliances side, you're UK only, or are you EMEA?
I'm just UK only.
So you've got colleagues across Europe and elsewhere.
Europe globally, and you have to you work very much in collaboration with them.
Yeah.
I think cyber is all about collaboration. You're starting to see more and more organisations from a vendor perspective start collaborating, building partnerships up, because there's no one vendor that can truly say we solve the cyber challenge you've got as a customer. We might get there some stage in years to come, but certainly as things stand at the moment, not hope. So to make sure you're working in collaboration to give your customers the best defence,
Yeah.
you've got to collaborate. If you look at CrowdStrike, I think we just announced a collaboration yesterday with Rubrik. We've got collaboration with Veritas. We've got collaboration with a lot of other security vendors because we can't do everything. But what we do, we do bloody well. And
Yeah.
the platform we've created is starting to dominate the market.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And so have you got plans to grow a team in the UK?
From a CrowdStrike perspective,
Yes, as more partner managers? Or
we've got a pretty mature team already. So CrowdStrike made a decision a good year or two ago now. They grew very, very quickly. That was done very much in terms of a hybrid approach between direct and indirect. But we've got some smart guys running CrowdStrike, and they've spotted very early on that actually to continue the growth, to get to where we wanted to be in 5 years' time, which is in the sort of 10 billion arena, we've got to have the channel on that. So we've actually moved into 100% channel focus now. So there's already a premature team there. We've got some really strong partnerships. And what we're looking at doing is just scaling that out, both not just across the enterprise space, but across the MSP space, across the
Yes.
mid-market space, et cetera, et cetera.
You mentioned 10 billion there. That's a target. You're probably aware that Computer Center, I think, just crossed the 10
It is,
billion
yeah.
marker themselves. And actually, if I go back a few weeks ago, because again, I've been trolling you on LinkedIn for a little while here, there's that lovely photograph of yourself and Jeff Greenlaw back at the Computer Center
Yes.
sales kickoff. I don't know whose copyright. I'm going to have to get a copy of that to Pete, the producer. We can slot that in here. But the two of you are looking in fine form. I think it's in Berlin in their
Yep.
sales kickoff. Interesting to me, the photo is fantastic, but if you just look down underneath it, below the line, you've got, Jeff Greenlaw puts you down. He says, Mark, one of the nicest guys on the planet. One of the nicest guys on the
Very
planet.
humble.
He says, if you're both on and off the pitch, to which, by the way, Mark, 327 people liked, which I take my hat off to you. 327 people responding to it. And then there's a whole bunch of comments. Steve Hatherley, Ross Walker, Kate Goodwin, a whole bunch of them then put in legends. So that I think when I say legends, that is in the plural. So it's probably yourself and
true.
Jeff. But you've got a lot of goodwill. Incredible. I mean, that whatever the period of time you've been in the market, you must have met clearly thousands, potentially tens of thousands over that time. You've got a lot of goodwill. You're clearly well liked. Is likability a kind of a distinguish or a differentiator between the kind of person who'll do well in partner management and partner sales, channel sales, rather than maybe the direct sales force? Because I think I've seen it before with vendors where they said the partner people just have I don't know, there's a little bit more
panache. Yeah. It's a really valid point, Mark. I don't think I went out to say, right, this is what I'm going to try and become and what I want to try and do. I think I've just had some guiding principles that I've always worked to in my career. So it's always been honest with people, always been straight with people, trying to overachieve on expectations. I say, so if I say I'll get back to you in a couple of days, I always try and get back in a day. Just some basic core values I've always operated to. And I've never knowingly stitched anyone up. I've always been very straight with people, very honest with people. And I think that stood me in great stead, right? Because there's nothing that can come back and bite you further down the line. And it's not unique
that's the
to
key
me.
That's the key to having a long career as well. If you think about it, just the ability to be able to remain in the sector for a long period of time. I think you have to have done good business throughout those years. And as I said, even just showing up on time, saying please and thank you, and doing what you say, those basic fundamentals, you'll go a long way.
Having empathy, right? I think the key thing about the channel is and it's not just channel, but one of the things I've always tried to understand is how the person I'm working with or selling to is golden measured, and trying to make sure that it's not just me that wins out of a deal, they win out of it as well. So you almost create the win-win-win-win, as I call it, the win for the vendor, the win for me, the win for the person I'm dealing with in the partner, and the win for the customer. Because that'd be a great deal, right? If it suddenly becomes, if you've got no win-win-win-win across the board, and you've got negativity anywhere, it's not a great deal. You've got to go above and beyond to try and create that deal. That great deal can be additional margin in some way, shape, or form. It can be helping someone with the end user customer, solving a key issue they've got. It can help someone get promotion, whatever it might be. I think that's really valuable doing that. But that's not to underpin that. Probably what got me a lot of those likes was a lot of beer tokens that I bought over the years in terms of the channel's not and I'm not sure sales is in general. It's not a 9 to 5 job. Certainly when I was younger, maybe not quite as much now. I used to do an awful lot of what I called the 5 to 9 work as well. Yeah, and so it made for very long days, and certainly around festive periods, that sort of stuff. My wife would just say goodbye and see me in January or see you Christmas Day, because I used to go out of my way to go. Cause you get so much value from that. I call it the 5 to 9 slot. Yeah. You get to know people, you build relationships with them, and they become friends. And I don't think I'm still a little bit old fashioned. I'm still a great believer in certainly from a channel perspective. People not necessarily buy from people because it's a little bit more than that. But I think people work with people where there's a strong relationship, and that you can leverage your advantage.
So how did you cope during lockdown then? Because you said I'm also like yourself. It's like I want to deal with people in person. I want to deal with them in person. I like to speak to them on the telephone. We can work remotely where we need to. But how did you find that kind of 2-year, pretty much intense lockdown period?
In summary, I hated it. So bizarrely during that time, just as the first lockdown happened, I changed jobs and I took on a new sales team, and it was 4 or 5 months before I could even meet them. And joining a new organisation, trying to get to know your sales team, build those relationships. You can do it, but it just takes a lot longer. And the other thing I noticed as well, it takes you a lot longer to ramp up when you're remote. It's been in the office, the ambient noise you get in the office, the overhearing of conversations, that sort of stuff. I missed immensely. So I've got to be honest, I did go out and meet my team that I probably shouldn't have done in various areas, very clandestinely. But it was a struggle. And but I think from the IT industry, I think it's driven some really interesting changes.
It has.
In terms of the amount of people you see on the sales floor, and a lot of the partners now has definitely dropped. I think it's getting better. I think actually the really interesting part, I think, and it's only my personal opinion, is I think what it did was align refresh periods with organisations. So you always used to have typically an organisation refresh their technology every 3 years.
Right.
I thought what COVID did was drive people to make and adopt new technology very, very quickly. A lot of partners, a lot of the channel made an awful lot of money out of that.
You couldn't get equipment, could you? There was
I think that's where the channel
webcams
really
in particular.
Correct, but I think the channel really showed its value there in terms of where it's able to scale, help
Yes.
customers, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. But I think during the lockdown, everyone had to do it, which meant some refreshes going on. And I think
Yeah.
what they've done now is all the major organisations certainly are all aligned in terms of their refresh periods now to every year, every Pacific, every third year. Whereas before, I think the channel used to benefit quite heavily, going right, customer X, Y, Z, they refreshed 2 years ago, they'll refresh me next year, we'll see it. I think what you're going to see is a very cyclical period in the channel, or not just a channel in the market, where a lot of these bigger organisations, certainly in the enterprise space, are refreshing on their 3 year cycle, all aligned now. And
Right.
that comes
Okay.
up next
Right.
year, so hopefully we'll have some money out of that.
Excellent. 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 So, a hypothetical question for you here: if there was a
Hmm.
new vendor entering, let's be specific about it, they're entering the UK market, new vendor
Yep.
entering the UK market, how would you recommend they kind of set up and plan and put into place their channel? What would be the approach?
Yeah, a really good question. I think from my perspective, if I was taking a role like that, I think it would be very much focused. What you've got now is some very, very good distis out there. I think distributors are very underestimated. I think they've been brandished in a lot of organisations as someone that just transacts, and that's not
Right.
actually strictly true. You've got some very specialist distis out there that are market aligned. So you've got specialist cyber distis, specialist storage distis,
Yeah.
etc., etc., and they've got a wealth of intelligence around install base, around the partners that are actually playing in that space, etc., etc. And I think you identifying the right disti, working really, really collaborative with them, make it profitable for them, and making sure you're leveraging what they can bring. They're like an information warehouse, all these distributors, in
Right.
terms of they've got the end user details, they've got the partner details, etc., etc. And that's their IP. And a lot of vendors, I don't see leveraging that in an effective way. It's getting better.
Right.
And I think the distis are getting much better at being able to create and leverage that value. But I think I personally would do it via the distribution route in the first instance. And
Right.
from there,
Got
you
you.
build the relationships with the partners. It's almost a two-phase type approach.
If you could get the disty on side, then said
The right distis, by the way.
correct, but to get the right disty working with you, they can help you fill in all of the other pieces. They can show you the channel that would
Correct.
best suit your purposes.
Exactly that. And I think it's not just a channel. I think they can show you the end users too, where there's complementary
Right.
products. So, well, going back to our point earlier around, you're seeing an awful lot of vendors now create these strategic relationships. So if you have a particular technology that complements an existing technology very well, and you select the right distributor that may well hold the franchise for that complementary product,
Yeah.
that gives you the ability to accelerate your way into the market pretty significantly. 'Cause it's just not only the partners, it's the end user customers as well.
Tell me, which part of the channel relationship at the moment is causing perhaps the most problems? Are there any parts of the relationship that we say, I wouldn't say dysfunctional, but let's say suboptimal? So what's the toughest part of managing the channel right now?
I think it's setting the right expectations is how I position it. I think to my point earlier, I think there's expectations with a lot of vendors, not all, and I think vendors are getting much better at it. That a rep within a partner should be able to go out with vendor XYZ's corporate deck and pitch that deck to a customer and do the wholesale and just bring an order back. In reality, it doesn't work like that way. You look at all these partners, they have hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of vendors. They
Right.
can't do that for every vendor. So I think you need to be, one of the things I'll say is creating that right expectation internally of getting the end user reps in an organization to really understand how to leverage and how to drive the value from the channel. But I think the channel as well needs to get maybe a little bit smarter around how they enable the reps within the partners. So, if you take Computer Center, SEC, or CW or Bytes, the rep's job in those organizations is to sell Computer Center, SEC, Bytes, and they'll focus on the technical capabilities, the logistical capabilities,
Yeah.
the managed services, professional services capabilities. If you can educate those reps on solving a business problem, it's much easier for them to remember that and go out and position it. What you want them to do is just find an opportunity. Once they find it and throw it up, as a vendor, you grab it, you run with it, and you work with them collaboratively to close it. Now, it varies from partner to partner. Some partners are technically brilliant, and they know as much as some of the vendor guys do as well.
Yeah.
And they've got the ability to run with it and close it, but they're very few and far between. But I think if you can get that whole collaboration piece and just get those relationships built up, it would save some of the friction you see in the channel. The biggest question I get there is the channel doesn't add value, and it's like, well, if you're saying that, clearly you're not working properly or in the right way with the channel.
So who's saying that though? Is the vendors saying that, or the customers?
No, I think it's more the individual reps in certain instances within the vendors.
Right.
But then by the same token, you do get it from a partner perspective because
But the individual rep in the vendor thinks that they did it all. They think it's down to them, don't
I
they?
think not all of them, but you're asking generically about the friction. That's probably where I still see the biggest area of friction. But typically they measure the value of a partner on a deal by deal basis. To my point earlier, you cannot measure it. The bigger the deal, the more the vendor will be involved, and the less value the channel can add. They can add value around competitive intelligence, etc., etc. We use MedPick internally. What the partners are very good at is the P, which is the paper process. That's valuable. That saves you time, especially if you're
absolutely.
But what they don't see is you can't measure value on a deal by deal basis from the channel. You have to look much more holistically at it. My point earlier around some of these distis have got phenomenal MSP businesses in terms of what they built and generate with thousands and thousands of customers. But you don't even touch it. You just get a PO at the end of the quarter or the end of the year, whichever way they operate from a billing perspective. But what that individual rep doesn't see, is all those thousands of orders into the SMB market or the mid-market that they're bringing through to you. They're just looking at it on a deal-by-deal basis. You've got to take a step back and look much more holistically at it.
Absolutely.
That makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. So listen, if you were to wind the clock back however many years, I think we should, we've probably mentioned the phrase back in the day a few times ourselves here. I think I might have that as a strap line for the Channel Zone podcast. Lots of the conversations, I'll say back in the day. But if you were to go back I don't know, whatever it is, 20 plus years, back to an earlier part of your career and give yourself a piece of advice when you first stepped into the partner management role, what advice would would Mark Devonshire give to the young Mark Devonshire moving into partner management?
Moving into partner management, I don't think there's a lot I would change, to be honest, Mark. I think the guidance and advice I give people is work hard, play hard, but keep that integrity, keep that honesty, and try and create that win-win-win. I think that's vital. And have a plan. I for various reasons never really had a career plan. And it's really interesting there in terms of a lot of the people I grew up with in the channel and people I started off in the channel are now very successful enterprise sales directors, VP of the countries. I love seeing it. It's phenomenal to see. I always was I want the channel. I love the channel. I want to carry on working the channel. I never wanted to to go to an extreme senior level because I always found the more I moved up the management chain, the less time I spent customer and partner facing. And I've got to be honest, I think my strength was always customer facing, partner facing, building those relationships. So I think it's having a clear plan. Where do you want to go? And then getting a mentor. I never really had a mentor as such when I was younger.
Right,
that was
same here.
All this mentorship type stuff that came through was probably halfway through my career. But I think it's get a really clear mentor and don't be afraid. Just go out and be yourself and take your challenges on. And I think that's something you see going back to my thing with some of these youngsters today. Some of them are absolutely fearless and very, very good. If I was half as good as them back in the day, I'd have probably been in a much better place than I am now.
They stand on the shoulders of giants, those who've gone before them. And as I said, I think to me, let's say the lasting testimony, I don't think there's many people could have a picture of themselves on LinkedIn and have 327 people effectively saying, yeah, fantastic. I mean, you've
Mark,
got,
just on that point, in case anyone goes and looks at that picture, I was stone cold sober. I was on a flight the next day and driving.
Listen, was that a snap from somebody else? It wasn't a selfie, or was that the professional photographer that they might have had at the kickoff? Because it's a great picture.
It was a snap from someone else who just said, "It's great seeing you together. Let's get a picture." So it wasn't stage managed in any way, shape, or form. And do you know what? Jeff is a great guy. I worked with Jeff for many a year. And we had some good laughs together. And that's typical of, I think Jeff is someone I'll still ring up now occasionally and ask for advice from, vice versa. Maybe not so much now with Jeff, but certainly when he first moved into Channel many years ago, we worked very, very closely. Because Jeff used to be an enterprise sales director that moved into the Channel that way. So he came into the Channel very naively.
So he's kind of new to it in comparison to yourself.
Not now he's not, but he's... Right. I think, going back to that point, the word legend from a channel perspective, Jeff is absolutely building that legacy. and is a great guy to work for. Very knowledgeable, very supportive. And as importantly, very, very credible and liked by the partners as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, as I said, listen, I was one of those 327 people, but you're undoubtedly, I will validate, one of the nicest guys on the planet, both on and off the pitch. I don't think I've got much experience of you off the pitch, although saying that, we did bump into each other, if you remember, at the old comedy luncheon a few weeks ago, a few years ago, I should say. Yeah. So, listen, thanks ever so much for joining us, Mark. Really appreciate you taking time out this morning at the end of a quarter. Makes the time even more valuable. I'll let you get back to your day. Thanks ever so much. I'll catch you in the field at some point in the not too distant future. Until then,
I look forward to it.
Cheers, buddy.
Great, Mark. Great to speak to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.